Have you ever wondered what makes some teams thrive while others struggle? This season, we are going to uncover the secrets to effective communication, trust building, and conflict resolution. We're going to discuss how diverse perspectives can fuel creativity and innovation while learning practical strategies to enhance your team's synergy. We are going to transform your team from good to great. Stick with us. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. I am your host, John Espinosa. I am your host, John Espinosa, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. We are kicking off the season of teamwork. So this season, we are going to focus on how teams work together, how they collaborate, the decision making, and how they deal with conflict resolution. Now, you may be telling yourself, John, I don't have a team. I don't lead a team. So you may be the single owner of your business, or you may be a student, or you may be a parent out there and you don't have a team that you technically either lead or are a part of. But I will argue the fact that if you're a parent, your family is your team. If you're a student, there are going to be projects that you work on throughout your collegiate career or your technical schools. You will interact with other people at some point in your career. That's a team. So just because you are not formally part of a team and you don't have a team name, or you are not a manager or a leader of a team, think of this season as ways that you can better yourself to interact with. Team is just another word for a group of individuals that come together to unite around a common purpose. Whether you're part of a community organization, maybe you're coaching or helping to coach an athletic team, or maybe you're running the booster club and you're sitting on a board and you have a team. I could go on and on around all the teams that you are a part of in everyday life. So this season, we're going to talk about the 4 main topics that when I have worked with teams, these 4 things come up time and time again. And when I go to organizations and we do that upfront analysis of the team, and I normally meet with the senior leader, we talk about the culture, we talk about the mission, we talk about the vision. And then I always ask, all right, what are your values, your core values that you and your team or your organization or your group of individuals are working towards? And a lot of times they can't answer that question, or they say we got poor communication. So I dig deeper into, well, what does that look like? What does poor communication look like? Because that can mean many things. So then once I meet with the senior leadership of an organization or work with senior leaders of a company or a small team or small group of individuals, I start going and walking around and asking everybody else, what's it like to work here? What's it like to be a part of this team? And you would be surprised the interesting conversations that come up. There can be an incongruence of how senior leaders in an organization or in a club view the organization and how well the team is doing versus those individual contributors. So the 4 topics that we're going to break down into episodes. So each week we'll cover a topic. The first one, I've already said it, communication. Communication comes up either as an opportunity or a weakness in a lot of organizations. So either the communication that's occurring within the organization or within your group, or the communication that's going outward from your group and your team to others. Communication is a big part of everything that we do. Nonverbal, verbal communication, how messages are perceived, how they're written. Sometimes you have a meeting on a certain day, and guess what? That baggage that people bring in with them to that team meeting may not have anything to do with individual members that are sitting on that team. It may have to do with something else in their lives that are going on. And that's why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves, to put that oxygen mask on ourselves. So when we go into team environments, we can provide value. We give them our best. And highly efficient teams that I have noticed are great at communication. It doesn't mean that they don't have conflict or they don't disagree, but it means that they overcome those things. So communication, 1. The second one we're going to talk about is collaboration. How do your teams collaborate? How does your family collaborate? How does any group that you work with of individuals, how do they collaborate? Who makes the decisions? How do you make the decisions? decisions in that team? How do you distribute the work within your teams to make sure that it's even, to make sure that no one feels like they're overloaded, and a lot of times to make sure that the strongest person in that area is accomplishing that work? All of that has to do with collaboration, and there's a lot of things that have to happen and occur within a team or a small group in order for you to get to the point where you can collaborate. We'll talk about group dynamics: storming, forming, norming, and performing. Every group goes through a certain portion of those dynamics as they're getting to an optimal state to where they can absorb conflict, they're agile, they're flexible, and we'll talk about how to get there to that point, because there's a lot of things that you have to go through in order to get there. Trust. Make sure that others trust that when they make a decision or when they offer some input, guess what? Somebody else isn't going to come after them, and that input is welcomed. So number 2 is collaboration. Number 3, we're going to talk about how you deal with conflict in your teams. A lot of times we use the word conflict to mean we have a disagreement, but I've found that we can disagree without being in conflict. Now, what does that look like, John? I can have a difference of opinion about a certain decision that the group is making without us being in conflict. I mentioned those high-performing teams. You want to have that open-mindedness, those individuals that aren't thinking the same. I want to have experts, go-tos in their particular areas. So if we're trying to problem solve or brainstorm or come up with ideas, I want diverse people that are surrounding me on my team in order for us to come up with the best possible decision that we can. Now, that doesn't mean that it may not be the right decision, or we may fail, but we fail together and we're all on board with that decision. We're not going behind each other's back and, whispering, well, John, he made that decision. That's his fault. We're together. That's our fault. That's the team's fault. We came up with that decision and it didn't quite go the way that we planned. So that speaks to how conflict can arise, especially when you have individual team members blaming others. So we will talk about conflict management, which is the 3rd week. And then last but not least, decision making. Every team makes decisions. Every group of people make decisions. How are those decisions made? Who makes the decision, and what process do you go through for that decision to come about? All of those things are important when it comes to team dynamics. So going back to communication, going back to collaboration, how do you communicate and how do you collaborate around decision making? So while each one of these will be discussed separately and we'll come up with some episodes, I'm going to have a couple guest speakers come in and talk about how they lead their teams. One of the reasons that I narrow it down to those 4 things is through my experience with working with high-performing teams. High-performing teams gets those 4 things right. They communicate well, they collaborate, they resolve conflict, and they make decisions. And they stick with those decisions, good or bad. So I am excited to dig into this because all of us are part of teams. There are very few people out there that only work by themselves and don't depend on somebody else. Even though you have a company and you may be the sole proprietor, the sole worker in that company, you're still depending on other people. So what's that communication look like? How do you collaborate externally? What's your decision-making process? Do you consider the impact that that decision can make? All of those things are important. Whether you're part of an organized team or you're working with others outside of you to get things done. Stick with us because we're going to have a ton of information to share with you to make your good teams great. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel because you are not going to want to miss any of the episodes for this season. I hope you are ready to dig deep because this season is going to be all about how teamwork makes the dream work. Go be great. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor, click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.